Hello,
Hey,
hello,
it's
hello.
so good to see you. I'm
It's
so
good to
glad you're
see you.
on. How's life in the woods of West Virginia?
We are definitely in the mountains, in the woods. Life is just different here. It's a little bit slower, um, more of a family feel and orientation, and lots of cooties floating around. So I'm trying to nurse myself back to health. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm happy to be here.
You know what? I can't even imagine going from LA. No, well, you were in Bakersfield and then LA and then to the mountains of West Virginia.
West by God, Virginia. Yes.
Well, I mean, I love looking at your feed. I love looking at all the activities that you do. Kristi, you are a woman of many talents. I see you jarring fruit
Canning, yes.
and can see. I don't even know the proper
You city folk don't know anything
look. I'm like, are you drawing? What are you doing? I see you canning fruit.
canning.
Your Halloween costumes. I think if you don't follow Kristi, you should only follow her. If well, you should follow her for a lot of reasons, but least of all
We're
the
always at the
Halloween costumes, or most of all the Halloween costumes, because every year y'all make it happen.
shenanigans. We try.
And so, like I said, I've known Kristi for about 20 years.
Hmm.
We did youth ministry together actually at the
Yep,
City of Refuge. You remember that, Kristi?
I
And
do.
I just want to tell you when I knew you were a real one. I don't know if you remember this, but we were in the parking lot in between services, I think, and a fight was breaking out. Do you remember this?
Oh,
A fight was breaking out. And I was like, okay, I'm going inside. And you were like, let me go over there and talk to them and see what's going on. And that's what you did. You got up in the mix and you worked it out. And I was like, oh, she's a real one. Okay.
yeah. It's in those moments that you realize that people are at the church because they're sick. They're
Mm,
there because they need to learn some alternative coping mechanisms. They believe, but the practical application sometimes isn't there yet. And so
yeah.
when I can help in those situations,
Hmm.
I try to.
No, you did. You did. I thought, okay, I can rock with her. She's real.
Now,
Um,
I can tell you, I remember the first time that you hung out with the youth, and we were
mhm.
all at Wilson's house.
I was about to say, is this where she's going with
So you come to hang out, and we had some food, and we're having deep conversations. There's no partying going on. It's really some grown kid, adult, you know, looking at life.
right.
And then there's a buzz at the door downstairs.
I know where you're going with this.
There was a buzz at the gate, and someone is asking to be let up.
Yeah.
And Wilson's like, "Who? What? Who is this? This is Bishop Jones." And we were like, "What? Who is out there playing
Yeah.
on the intercom?"
He wanted to come and hang out with the young folks.
Yeah, we let him up, and we were
Yep.
like, "Oh, it's really you? Okay. Let me see what Tiffany is doing. She's safe. We're, you
I'm
know."
telling you, he wanted to come. He was checking up on me, and yeah,
That was cute.
it was funny. It's so funny that you remember that and that you
Yep.
brought that up. I haven't thought about that in a really long time. But yeah. So let's get into this book.
Let's get into it.
But you know what? Before I do, I start every show with a particular question.
Okay.
And I start the show with this question because, I think that, especially as church girls, church babies, we can
Yep.
grow accustomed to only understanding and believing and feeling God in the sanctuary,
At the church.
right? We talk about ushering him in and inviting in his presence to this particular place, the house of God. But we all know that God is everywhere, right?
Yes.
God is, outside, he's in your home, he's at your school, he's in your car, he's at just everywhere. And
Hmm.
he's always trying to speak to us if we will pay attention.
Hmm.
And so my question to you is, where have you seen God lately?
So I will say, as an entrepreneur,
Mm,
as a small business owner, every day is critical. You don't know sometimes where the next big check is coming from. You
yeah.
don't know whether the decisions you're making are going to be the most advantageous for your company. And I can tell you that I have seen God in my personal pivots.
Mm,
My personal pivots.
yeah.
Roads that I've gone down that I thought were going to be the end all be all and
Mhm.
fell flat. And in that moment, I had to pivot, just like the pivoting I had to do during the pandemic. And I saw
Yep.
God in these pivots, His reassuring, you're changing and you're turning, but you're going to be all right.
Yes.
And He sends me the message that things that are easy
Mhm.
that you can get, that are very familiar to you,
Uh-huh.
are those the best things to continue?
Hmm.
So
Mhm.
I have seen him in the pivots and
Yeah.
him pushing me to understand that it's the scary parts, it's the unknown parts that are going to make me grow, that are
Yeah.
going to stretch my faith, and
Mhm.
that are going to bring me closer to him. Because if it's easy, it's less likely that I'm going to completely rely on him. It's
Yeah.
less likely that I'm going to be able to see all
Mhm.
of his blessings and to see him around me. And so
Yeah.
I see him is in my pivots.
I love that. And I tell you why. Because I've been thinking a lot about our yes. We talk
Oh,
a lot about saying yes to God,
uh-huh,
right? We talk a lot
uh-huh.
about saying yes to the vision and yes to his will. But I feel like what we need to be saying yes to is really the journey. So it's not the end goal,
It's the journey.
it's a journey that's
It's
most
the process.
important.
It's the
Right,
process.
exactly.
And
And so
being
I
able
feel
to
you.
find him and see him in the process.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
you often find yourself and see yourself in the process, right?
absolutely.
Because the
Absolutely.
more you find him, the more he walks through life with you, the more you understand about yourself.
Yes, for sure.
And so, yeah, that resonates with me. I love that. So let's get into this book that I love so much. I'm so excited to talk about it. Um, as I mentioned, I could tell that this book came from a very vulnerable, very real, genuine, authentic place,
Yes.
right? Um, it's not a bunch of cliches about getting unstuck.
No,
It's not a bunch of kind of watered down things that you hear a lot. The messages that are in the book came from your personal experiences.
they did.
Um, I feel like you invited us on a journey through your process of getting unstuck.
Hmm.
And the good, the bad, the ugly, the sad, just all of it. And I appreciate that. Um, why did you feel the need to write the book?
So COVID brought on a lot.
Yeah.
It highlighted a lot. One of the things that I said throughout COVID, every time I was interviewed by the media, every time the newspaper came to talk to me, the one thing that I said was, if we don't pay attention, the next pandemic will be mental health.
Ah.
It will be
Mhm.
mental health. And so it is time for me to use my voice and
Mhm.
be vulnerable so that I can reach others. And that's what I did. And I felt like it was time for those of us who are educated and gainfully employed,
Yeah.
um, socially astute, to send the message through our own experience
Uh-huh.
that it's okay not to be okay.
Mm. Yeah.
It's okay not to be okay. I would love to tell you that I'm so emotional, I'm crying about this, but I'm not.
I
Dealing with these allergies. because we hear a lot of cliches. We
Yeah, we
hear
do.
a lot of how to's. We hear a lot of here are your steps,
Yeah.
SMART goals. If I'm struggling mentally, those
Yeah.
SMART goals don't mean anything.
Exactly.
I have to deal with where I am, the trauma that I've seen, and the things that are keeping me from moving to being my best self.
Right. That's so good. Your your book is about being stuck and getting unstuck.
Yes.
Let's level set. What is your definition of being stuck? Because I think a lot of us may be stuck and don't really know what it is.
Yeah. So what I did was I based a lot of understanding stuckness on John Myers's Wheel of Life,
Yeah.
right? And so there are the original wheel has six different components. There
Mhm.
have been newer ones that have 8 and 10 and so forth, but I like the original because I feel like it helps us compartmentalize and understand our lives. And
Right.
so my huge message to people is that it doesn't mean that every area of your life, health and wellness, career and financial, family, spiritual, doesn't mean that every single aspect is in the crapper.
Yeah.
It means that there's a place on that wheel that you're not experiencing movement, which can
Mhm.
cause the whole wheel to come to a screeching halt. So I
Mhm.
use the analogy of a tire. If you are driving down the road and you get one tire and one nail to
Yep.
go in that one tire, that whole tire goes flat and there's no movement. And
Mhm.
so it's really trying to help people assess where they are on the wheel of life, what they're most drawn to, which means it likely needs the most attention, and fixing that area so that the whole wheel can start moving again. That's what
Mm.
stuck is to me.
Mhm. And what
Is
go ahead. Oh, I was gonna ask, what are the areas of the wheel of life so that we can know
so
what you're talking about?
spiritual and
Mhm.
religious. There is financial and career. There's education. There's family. Um, and I'm missing one. Oh, marriage and relationships.
Mm. And so you're saying when one of those areas are out of whack, it can affect your entire
Absolutely.
process.
Because a terrible work situation will then in turn bleed over into family life, right? You come home from work and you're short with your kids, you're short
Yeah.
with your spouse, kick the dog, whatever. It
Mhm.
can just start bleeding over into other areas.
Mhm. So your book is about finding out what that area is and
Yes,
dealing with the area, would you
yes,
say?
yes.
Mhm. And so you mentioned several well, let me go back. So you mentioned that you wrote it while you were in COVID. Or during COVID? Why did you feel the need to be so vulnerable?
So, I learned while COVID was happening, all of the Zoom sessions that I was doing, all of the workshops, and all of the initiatives that I started, what was getting people drawn to my platform was vulnerability.
Yeah.
People had heard enough, they had seen enough, they'd had enough surface information that still
Mhm.
wasn't working.
Mhm.
So I started hashtagging leaning into vulnerability. And I started telling
Ah.
my story. I started
Uh-huh.
talking about the death of my child. I started talking about things that folks were able to resonate with on a much deeper level.
Mhm.
People were socially distancing, we were isolating, and I realized that what was needed to really draw people in was a personal experience. We were longing for interaction.
Yeah.
We were longing for human exchange. And
Uh-huh.
so the best way to do that was to just be vulnerable and tell my own story.
Do you feel like more of us would be healed if we were honest
If
and
we
vulnerable?
yes, if we were honest with ourselves, if we were honest at the church.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking about. Right.
If we were honest, everything is not peachy keen all the time. I don't care if you're the
Yeah.
pastor or if you're the pew member. And when
Mhm.
we start meeting people at the point of their need,
Yeah.
people will be healed.
Mhm. But it's so hard
Oh, it is.
because even though we encourage that, because we'll say come as you are, but when somebody come as they are, it's a
You're
lot of
blown
words
away.
exchanged, it's a lot of looks, it's a lot of
Oh, yeah.
judgment, it's a lot of who
Oh,
is
yes.
she or who is he, or we don't want them, and just a whole lot of stuff.
Does she have that on? Did he put that on? Oh,
Right.
oh my goodness. There's a
Mhm.
lot of that. And it's the reason that our churches aren't filling up.
Mhm.
People are running out. And
Yeah.
so we have to learn. We have to learn to be vulnerable. It's the vulnerability that
Mhm.
people need because they need to know that you get it.
Yeah. That's where the connection is.
Yes,
Right? It's in that communicate.
absolutely.
It's in that, now you're relatable. I can relate to you.
Yes,
My
your
story is
testimony.
your story, yours exactly.
Mhm,
Your testimony. Um, yeah. So I think that, that is definitely needed. How to get there,
mhm,
that's a different story. But I think works like yours really encourage people. And I think using your voice and, sharing and not being afraid to be honest because, makes other people honest. Because I
sure.
think when people see you moving in your authenticity, it allows them to move in their authenticity
Oh,
as well.
yes.
And so
Oh, yeah.
now we're getting healed together, right? In your book, you lay out a number of different um, reasons why we become unstuck. I
Mhm,
mean, why we get stuck in the first place, right?
mhm.
You talk about the power of words, you talk about trauma and other things.
Yes.
And I want to just dive into a couple of those because I thought that it was really good. The power of words.
Mhm,
I think this chapter was so important, and it could be because I'm a word girl. Like I am, like words of affirmation is my
mhm.
love language. And one question that it made me ask myself in thinking about how I talk to myself is, you know, what happens to my love of self when I don't talk to myself in a loving way?
Uh-huh.
When I don't affirm myself, like what happens to self-love if you're not speaking words of empowerment to yourself?
It becomes stagnated, and
Mm,
then you fall into a systemic way of treating yourself and talking to yourself in a way that is not advantageous, and we all know that it only takes a couple of times for something to become a habit, right?
right,
And
right.
so we get in the habit of sending ourselves messages that are not healthy,
Mhm.
and then we also get in the habit of receiving messages that are not healthy because they begin to line up with this false narrative that we
Right.
have of ourselves.
Mhm. Now something else that you talked about was the, messages that we get from other people.
Yes. I talked about, as sweet and, well-intentioned as they were, my
Yeah,
parents. I got very specific messages from them about earning money,
right.
about, gifts and traits that
Uh-huh.
could earn you money. And the things that I was so good at, those things seemed like hobbies to them
Yeah.
because they came from a generation where you worked an 8 to 5 and you fed your children, you provided for your family, and you went
Mhm.
home. There
Yeah.
was no passion behind what you're doing. It didn't have to line up with your life's trajectory. You got a check,
Yeah, period.
period. And so many of the things that set my soul on fire and that I just loved doing and I knew that I was good at, I was
Mhm.
sent the message that those are cute. Those are
Right.
cutesy, but go get a job.
Exactly. Like, that's a nice hobby, do that on the side, do that on the weekend after you come
That's
home.
your weekend kick, okay?
Right, right.
And those messages begin to fester, and
Yeah.
you begin to draw more of those
Uh-huh.
things to yourself.
Yeah, and I think these are even how narratives are made, right? Like, we don't
Mhm.
question a lot of stuff, especially that our parents tell us. We don't
Yeah,
question things that all the messages that we get from society, we just kinda go with it.
sure.
And so if a message is, you have to work a 9 to 5 in order to get what you need out of life, that's just
Mhm.
kind of what we go with. Or like another message is you have to go to college and
Yes.
you have to do this in order to be successful, which
Yes.
isn't necessarily true, but we just kind of run with it, right?
Absolutely.
I was thinking about messages that I'd received that, really impacted me in the way that I work and the way that I do things. And they're messages around perfection and
Mm.
messages around
Oh.
excellence, right?
Oh,
And there are
yes.
messages around, one is, if you can't give it all, don't give it anything. It's like, well, but giving something in some cases is better than giving nothing. Because if you wait until you feel like you
You're
can give it
perfect.
all, you're not
You'll
going to do it. There will never be a perfect situation.
Absolutely. And that's one of the chapters in the book, which was Make Moves Afraid. A lot of
Right.
times we don't have a well scripted plan. Nobody had a plan for COVID. That thing jumped up
Exactly.
on us and we did not know what to do.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you won't have a well scripted plan, but you'll have a desire and a willingness to take risks.
Right.
Sometimes that's all you need. Just
That's
make
it.
moves afraid. I don't know how this is going to work out, but I
Yep.
feel it aligns with where I'm supposed to be, with
Yeah.
what God says I can do.
Right.
Just make moves afraid.
So some of these messages we have to disrupt. And
Uh-huh.
we have to be in spaces where we can be exposed to other messages
Sure.
that we pick up on,
Sure.
Some of these messages, they just have to be disrupted. I had to disrupt, the message around, perfectionism and
Mhm.
only doing things that I think I would be able to be perfect
In.
at,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so yeah, you have to learn how to disrupt this stuff. Now, you mentioned a quote that actually goes with this chapter. The brain not only believes what you tell it, it believes how you feel.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I have learned is that the reticular, I know this is something that we were probably going to touch on, but the
Yeah, yeah,
reticular,
you can go into it. This is
okay,
a great segue. The
the
reticular
reticular
activating system.
activating system, it is a little almond shaped part of the brain that is um, down by the brain stem. And it is the filter for the brain.
Yeah.
So the brain takes in millions and millions of data points of stimuli every single day. If we
Mhm.
attended to all of it, our brains would explode. Like it would short circuit. We wouldn't be able to do it. And so what the reticular activating system does is it helps filter what
Uh-huh.
information is important. So
Mm.
the brain is sensing one, what you're paying attention to,
Yeah.
and it's also watching how you feel about that information. And once it
Hmm.
deems it important, it starts bringing more of that stimuli to you. So I
Say
gave
that
the
again. So what I'm thinking about is the algorithm, what we call the Facebook
yes,
algorithm,
yes,
right?
it
The
is the brain
more
algorithm.
types of posts that we like and that we engage with, the more we see them coming our way.
Absolutely.
So I bought some shoes from Nine West because I saw an ad on Facebook. Now I'm getting shoes like ads
It's everywhere.
from everybody, like all the shoe stores,
Yep,
right?
absolutely. And so this is what the brain does too. And I have been very curious about this and watching the way that this happens.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, I've started doing a lot of in services and workshops based on
Hmm.
the book. And I tell people, if you're in business and all you see are the things that are not going well, all
Uh-huh.
you see are the things that, there's more bills. Every time, guess what is going to be in the mailbox when you go
A
back out?
bill.
Oh, it's a bill. Some more
Yeah.
bills. So if you're saying, I can't find a good mate, they're all trifling, they're all shiftless, they're no count, no good. Guess what the next person you're going to date is going to be?
Hmm.
Shiftless, countless, no, because you have told the brain, this is important. This is
Yeah.
how I feel about it. And the brain can only believe what
What you
you
tell it.
feel and what you tell. Absolutely. What you tell
Hmm.
it and how you feel
How
about
you
it.
feel.
So
Hmm.
that's why I'm always saying find yourself in a place of gratitude. When things go right, make a big deal of that, even if it's small, because the
Yeah.
brain is taking notice. Have a genuine sense of gratitude about it before it happens. Like, I'm feeling grateful right now that this eye is clearing up and this nose is going to stop running so that I find myself in a place of gratitude so that it brings that wellness to me.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh dear God, I can't get on this live. My eyes looking crazy.
Uh-huh.
Nose is running. I get no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
'Cause
okay.
what you focus on is what's gonna come
What
to you.
absolutely. And so I'm sitting right now feeling genuine gratitude for being healed. And it's
Yeah.
not here. I'm still wiping my nose. I'm still wiping my nose.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But I feel a sense of gratitude knowing that I will be healed. And
Mhm.
because the brain is taking notice of that
Mhm.
and it's believing how I feel about it,
Yeah.
it will come to pass.
Ah, I love that. I love that. Um, it remind me of a Bible scripture. I see Sister Bobby Relaford is on. She's gonna be mad because I can't remember the Bible scripture. I can't remember the one, but it sounds like something biblical. It sounds like a spiritual principle,
Mhm.
right? Just in
Absolutely.
terms of really paying attention. Think on these things,
Yeah.
right? Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are honest. Think on these things.
Mhm.
Why? Because
Because
your
the brain,
brain.
yes, yes,
I love it.
the brain believes it. The brain
Yeah.
believes it. It's the reason we're supposed to meditate on the scripture because the brain believes what we
Which
take in and what we're thinking about.
that's right. An Another thing that you mentioned as impacting our ability to be stuck or get unstuck is trauma. And I thought that was really interesting. Not trauma itself, because that makes sense to me. But the way that you defined trauma was different than I usually think about trauma. Because when I think about trauma, I only think about kind of those life changing experiences that happen to you,
Uh-huh.
that you
That
go
are
through. And of
catastrophic.
course, it changes everything, right?
Mhm.
But you defined it in a different way. And so I want you to go into how you define trauma and how that impacts our ability to be stuck or to
So,
get unstuck.
so
Mhm.
I defined trauma as any adverse lived experience that affects your functional impairment, your ability to function and
Yeah.
to be the best version of yourself. And so
Mhm.
I explain it as things happening on a continuum.
Mhm.
And most people are so struck by this. So I was prepared for this question because
Yes.
most people are struck by this because I give the example of the continuum. On one end of my continuum, a work relationship with a supervisor that was mentally abusive.
Yeah.
On the other end of my continuum was the death of my youngest son.
Yeah.
And I go on to explain that relationship, that abusive relationship with my supervisor impacted me more than the
Yeah.
death of my son.
Mhm.
And
I
that
remember you saying that.
trips people out because what I said is that when my son died, I had an immediate course of action.
Hmm.
I went to the father. Right?
Yeah.
So I used what I had been taught throughout the entire course of my life as a pew baby,
Mhm.
prayer and reading the word and fellowship with the saints, even during that darkest time,
Yeah.
meditating on the word, breathing exercises. I immediately understood the impact that this death had caused.
Mhm.
And I felt like I had a way to deal with it.
Right.
This situation with the supervisor, I had no immediate coping strategies to deal with what I was experiencing.
Hmm.
Being demeaned, the
Mhm.
condescension. You know, I have a bunch of degrees. That meant nothing in that
Yeah.
moment.
Right.
And I did not realize the impact that this adverse lived experience had on me until it was time for me to start my own practice. I was
Right.
anxious, I was nervous, I was second guessing myself, I didn't understand my worth, I had lost it.
Mhm.
And so it really constituted the most functional impairment of anything that I've ever experienced.
Mhm.
And so that's how I define trauma. It's any adverse lived experience
Mhm.
that halts your momentum and that causes functional impairment.
Yeah. The reason why I like that definition is because I think it allows more of us to have grace for ourselves, to give
Yes, yes,
ourselves more grace, right?
yes, yes,
Because
because
you can look at some people's situations and say, well, it's not as bad as that. I didn't go through this.
right,
I don't know why I'm acting like that.
yes,
But it
we and
allows yourself to give yourself grace because trauma can show up in a number of different ways.
absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's what's important is that we take out the hierarchy of trauma. Because
Mhm.
we do that to ourselves a lot of times, particularly as people of color.
Yeah,
Well, I didn't go through what she did. She lost something.
exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
you lost your dignity.
Period.
You lost
Yeah.
respect for yourself. You lost
Uh-huh.
your way.
Your confidence. Yeah.
Yes,
All the things
and
that are needed for us to successfully pursue
absolutely, and
life.
that's still
Mhm.
traumatic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Um, Now, like I said, you talked about, trauma and all the things that can cause us to get stuck, but you also, of course, talked about how we can get unstuck. And the
Yes,
approach that you use is a strength-based approach, right? A strengths-based
yes.
approach. So what is the strengths-based approach to getting unstuck?
So the strength-based approach is one of the classical theories that we use in the mental health field, in
Mhm.
humanistic psychology and some others, where we really want people to be able to look inside themselves and find the strengths, the talents, and the treasures that they already have.
Right.
I'm a firm believer that everything you need to be
Yeah, I already
successful
have.
is already inside of you.
Yes.
Look outside of yourself
Yep.
to have the things that you need
Uh-huh.
to be successful. It's already inside of you, but past disappointments, past relationships, adverse lived experiences tend to press those things down so far that we can't see it. But it's
Mhm.
it's there.
Mhm. I mean, one of the worst things that you can have is self-doubt because
Yes.
of all of these experiences that you've
Huh?
gone through. Self-doubt, lack of confidence
Yes.
in who you are and in your power. And so yeah, so the strengths-based approach I thought was a wonderful thing. Thought that everything you need is inside of you. It's
Mhm.
not outside of you. You already have what you need.
Already have it.
God has already equipped us with what we need
Yes.
to meet the plan and the assignments that He has for our life. So now it's about going in, assessing your needs. And in your book,
Yes.
you have space for us to assess our needs and to really think through, okay, I'm going into this situation. What is it that I already have? As a matter of fact, um, another quote that you had related to this is, and I want you to speak on this, you've been a slave to your doubt and fear long enough.
Mhm.
Use what's in your hands.
Yes, yes, yes. Use what's in your hand. you know, we think about, you know, crossing of the Red Sea and all of these things and it's so symbolic to me,
Yeah.
right? Even metaphorically to think about, there are times when we feel like the walls are just rising up and about to
Yeah.
crash down on us.
Yeah.
And I feel like that as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur. And what you got in your hand?
Right.
There was a rod, there
Right.
was a staff. You,
Right.
you, God is like, you already,
You
it's
already have
cut
it.
out. You already
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah.
You're looking for power and places outside of yourself, and there's
Hmm.
no need it. It's already in your hand. You have everything you need to line
Hmm.
up with your purpose and
Right.
live your purpose. It's already
Hmm.
in your hands.
Hmm.
Throw it
And I
out.
mean, no, and you mentioned your purpose. Um, One, and I'm going to switch gears for a minute because one thing that really struck me about this book and struck me about getting unstuck was how very clear and precise you were in visualizing what your ideal life is, what your purpose is, what it is that you want to do. You visualized it and you wrote it down, right? You had a whole couple of pages about what Kristi Williams Dumas's life should
Yes,
look like, what that ideal life should look like. And so it's one of the reasons why we don't use what we have in our hand, or we don't even recognize what we have in our hand, because we don't even know where we're going half the time.
yes,
We don't
yes,
even know what it is that we want. Where are we trying to go?
yes. So, one of the things that research tells us is that no action, no step is made without visualizing it first. It all
Mm,
starts with a visualization.
mhm.
Whether we realize it or not, that is what research says the brain does. And when I think about big projects that I'm doing, even, thoughts about another book, I'm
Yeah,
visualizing it first, right? So I can even see what it looks like. I can see what the chapters look like. I can see what the cover looks like. If it turns out that way, maybe not.
yeah.
But every single action that we take starts with a visualization. You have
Mhm.
to see it in order to do it.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, it sounds very cliche, and we say it in church all the time, but science says the same thing.
Science backs that
You
up.
need to see it in order to do it. Everything you do, when I'm going to knit something, yes, I knit. So if I'm knitting something, I visualize what the final product is going to look like, what kind of yarn I'm going to use, um, how thick I want it to be, how
Uh-huh.
tight I want the gauge to be.
Yeah.
I can see it. So
Yeah.
we have to translate that into the larger things that we do in our life as well.
Mhm. So you would say in life, the more you can write down, the more you can see, like, and not even just the more that you can see, but the more that you can write the vision down,
Write the
right? The
vision
more
and
detailed you
make it
can
plain.
be.
Yes.
Get super detailed on
Yes.
what it is that you want and visualize that, meditate on that.
Visualize. Yes.
That's good.
Absolutely.
Um, Another quote though that came with this in this chapter talking about your ideal life and what it is that you want, had to do with limitations. And so one of your and I think this was a very intriguing quote for a number of reasons. The quote said, "Limitations are just evidence of a lack of imagination and an unwillingness to take risks." So if
Yes.
you have detailed down what you want in life, limitations come up and you're like, "Oh well, I guess it's not for me."
Absolutely.
What you're proposing is that what?
So let me give you an example. Um, in my practice, we
Uh-huh.
see lots of clients, individuals, some couples. We are a new community provider for the local VA. So
Uh-huh.
veterans and doing brain training and traumatic brain injury. But we started out as just doing therapy with kids and court ordered people.
Uh-huh.
And that was exhausting me. I didn't feel like it lined up with my purpose. But I had resolved to being a one trick pony.
Yep.
And there are too many things that I can do with this
That's
doctor.
what I was about to say, which is really interesting because that doesn't even sound like you, but I
No,
think that's
it
another
doesn't.
conversation.
It doesn't.
Like, that doesn't even sound like you.
It doesn't. But when you're a business owner and you're an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, it's
Yep.
very easy to fall back to the things that you know are going to
That you
generate
know.
money,
Right.
but may not necessarily line up with your vision and with your purpose.
Yeah.
And so, very recently, I decided I'm not a one trick pony. There are
Mhm.
many other things that I enjoy doing. Recently, I've been doing consulting work for nonprofits and even an Episcopalian church,
Okay.
and making way more money in just doing the consulting
Mhm.
than having to see 20 people
Yeah.
in order to measure out and get the same reimbursement. And
Mhm.
so I realized then that it is huge to understand that your imagination will unlock the door to the rest of what's out there for you. And
Yeah.
getting stuck and not trying other things is just an excuse and not
Mhm.
using your imagination.
Mhm.
So my brain understood, my reticular activating system understood this is the direction that she wants to go in. She's finding this really important and she's placing a lot of emphasis in it. She believes that she can do this. And so it started bringing more
Yeah.
that stimuli to me, more clients,
Yep.
more opportunities
Yep.
because I believed it. And I felt a genuine sense of gratitude for where I was going. So you have to use that imagination and
Yeah.
you must take risks. If you don't take risks, everything stays the same and you
Everything
stay
stays the
stuck.
same. You have to be creative is what I hear
Yes,
you saying as well.
yes,
Um, and I think, we just talked about messages, we just talked about narratives,
uh-huh,
and I think a lot of us hold on to those narratives so tightly
yeah,
that we don't release ourselves to think bigger, to dream bigger, to
sure,
think, about other ways to accomplish what it is that we even want.
absolutely, absolutely.
Um, one other thing that I wanted to kind of touch on before we start closing and wrapping up is vision vampires. Vision
Oh,
vampires. So you mentioned that you can't share your vision. Once you have kind of created and constructed your ideal life,
mhm.
that you have to be really wise
Yes, you have to
with
be
who
careful.
you share this
Mhm.
vision with. Once you've detailed out everything that you see for yourself and where you're going, it's not for everybody.
It's not for
And
everyone.
you call these people vision vampires. So
I
can you
do.
explain what that is?
So I deconstructed the vampire. I very admittedly used to watch True Blood, which vampire movie. Pray for me, saints. Okay,
Uh-huh.
because my husband and I love that show.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Sookie Stackhouse and the Vampire People, and
Uh-huh.
one of the things that I thought was so intriguing was that even though sometimes the vampires meant well, they still ended up feeding off of the humans. These were
Mm.
people that they were in relationships with, that
Yeah.
they professed to love, but it was something about who they were innately as people or as
Mhm.
or as the undead,
It's
as
okay.
um, that caused them to betray and feed off of them. And a lot of times, we talk about the haters, we talk about people that we believe just flatly don't have our best interest at heart. And a lot of times, it's people that we love and that are related to us, but
Yeah.
because of their own sense of fear and insecurity, they project that onto us. And they
Yeah.
tell us the millions of ways we can't accomplish something. They tell us the ways that our plan won't work. They
Mhm.
tell us the ways that we won't be able to fund it. And it's not about the fact that they want to see us fail, it's the fact that they can't see themselves.
Right.
And so you just
Yep.
have to be careful.
So how do you distinguish between people who are these vision vampires and people who really do have your, I don't want to say best interest because you just explained that vision vampires can have your best interest,
Yeah.
but people who are um critiquing you, but
So,
critically.
so I talk about the Shift sisters in the book, and they are two of my first cousins. My dad was one
Uh-huh.
of 12, and I'm very close to these two, and we do a lot together. We support each other's vision, and we tell each other there's literally nothing that you can't do.
Yeah.
And how can I support it? So I
Mhm.
joke in the book, if I were to tell the Shift sisters, I want to go to the moon,
Mhm.
one of them would be very, very concerned about what I'm wearing. Well, what are you wearing to the moon? Uh,
Right.
okay, what type of PR and marketing are we going to do? Well, what
Mhm.
kind of resources do we already have? Is there a civilian program that we can get you
Right.
into? Nothing to them sounds outrageous. And I go
Right.
to them with some outrageous stuff. But their first instinct is to motivate me,
Yeah.
to congratulate me, and to help me. Find
Mhm.
those people. Find
Find those.
those people who, regardless to what the situation looks like, are willing to give a helping hand. Even if it
Yeah.
sounds ludicrous,
Uh-huh.
they're willing to move forward
It
with me.
comes down to community and who
Yes,
you're surrounding yourself
yes.
around.
It matters.
Mm.
It
Yeah, it
matters to me.
does. Yeah, even who you allow in your space. Because, some people will just suck the life out of you and
Yes,
suck out your dreams and suck out your visions and just all those
absolutely,
things because they haven't done the work to really examine their narratives and their messaging, right?
absolutely.
Um, and so, okay, we've heard so much from you tonight. It's been amazing. We're going to start wrapping this up. Um, if there is someone who is out there that is stuck right now and they're like, I don't know how to get unstuck. I don't know what to do. I don't even know where to start. I have an idea of what I want to do, but I have this blockage and something holding me back. What would be 3 steps that you would tell them to take?
So, number one would be look at your will of life. It's so easy to feel completely overwhelmed and not really know what deserves your attention first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if, spiritually you're struggling or you're struggling at home, take a good look at the will of life and just decide which one you're most drawn to. What needs your immediate attention? Because you could very well get that stable and the whole will start moving instead
Yeah.
of trying to attack every single thing at one time. Compartmentalize, see what you're drawn most to, and see what you are most dedicated to doing the work for.
Yeah.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, look inside of you. What do you already have? What are those positive characteristics that you already have to start resolving this problem? It could be patience, or you
Mm-hmm.
could be a good communicator, or you could have resources to a good therapist. Whatever it is, look inside of you and just do a strength based assessment. What do I already have? What's in my hand? What do I already have? And the last thing I would say is find what I consider the opposite of the vision vampire in the book.
Yeah.
Find a vision agent. Find
Mm-hmm.
a vision agent, someone who is willing to support you unconditionally, and start lining up every move that you make, every decision that you make,
Mm-hmm.
move towards your visualized ideal life. You got to be able to see it. See
Yeah.
it, visualize it, and just line yourself up with that vision agent. Make a date. Say,
Mm-hmm.
I trust you with my vision, and I want to sit down and talk to you. Would you be my vision agent? Would you help me right through here? Those are the things that I would absolutely do off the break, because a lot of times, like you said earlier, a lot of times we want our situation to get better, but we don't even know what that looks like to us.
Yeah.
So see it and then align yourself with the vision agent.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We
You're
always close
welcome.
out with our last question, and that is, what is something, and I know you'll get this because you were a church girl like me. You can't make me doubt him, right? We used to sing that all the time.
About him.
What is one thing that nobody can make you doubt?
Nobody can make me doubt the favor over my life.
Mm.
You can't
Mm.
make me doubt it.
Yeah.
He puts me in rooms that I would never be able to sit in. He puts me on boards that I may not be
Yeah.
qualified for. He gives me interactions with people who can
Yes.
carry my vision to the next
Mhm.
level. So
Yeah.
you cannot make me doubt the favor that the
Ah!
Lord has.
Yes. All right.
Come on.
Dr. Kristi Williams Dumas, everyone. Thank you so much for
Thank you so
joining
much,
us,
Lou.
Kristi. Please, please, please let everyone know where you are, where they can find you, and where they can purchase your amazing book.
So you can purchase the book on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle. You can also get it on Audible. It is
Ah!
on Audible as well. Um,
Yes,
Duma Psychology Collective is the website. Lots of good information there. And also follow me on TikTok. I'm the Unstuck Psychologist.
the Unstuck Psychologist. Thank you so much, Kristi.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you again for joining us. Kristi was amazing. I feel like everyone just needs to take a breath right now. It was a lot of good information to process. Um, I pray for you as you strive to get unstuck and do the work to get unstuck. And I hope that you pray for me as well. Okay. Again, the season starts March 2nd. This was just a little teaser. If you know someone who would benefit from this conversation, we will be posting it. As a matter of fact, it should already be on my YouTube. That's Tiffany Jones Blake's YouTube channel. If you haven't already liked and subscribed to it, please do that. And it's also going to live on my How To's with Tiffany Facebook page that I have now as well. Okay. I look forward to seeing you all March 2nd, if not before. Love you all. Bye-bye.